Imagine a world where you can have agency over the aging process. Regeneration is the name of the game.
Simon Sakhai is the visionary mind behind Young Plus, bringing game-changing longevity compounds to the masses. Having received his MBA from Oxford University, Simon founded the Moving Museum before his revolutionary entrance into the wellness industry.
Justin Bieber, Kendall Jenner.
I love debunking NAD. Is NAD gonna cure aging? It's not. Anyone out there that's taking Resveratrol, just stop. It's a waste of money. It's become very popular. I would recommend.
I take it every day before I work out.
It could be taken in the day and it could be taken at night. You plug it into your body, just makes your body better, whether that's trying to get you to have more energy or trying to get you sleep better. So I don't wear sunscreen every day. It's described as sunblock in a supplement. I think there's lots of issues with the Blue Zone documentary. The unfortunate truth is modern society is demanding. Simply to wake up costs resources. What's more scary is this loneliness epidemic, social media. There is no silver bullet for longevity. However,
welcome to Optimal with Ben Bowers. Today, we're excited to introduce Simon Sakhai, a dynamic leader in the longevity industry and the driving force behind Young. Young is dedicated to revolutionizing human longevity by translating cutting-edge aging research into products and technologies that slow aging and extend healthy lifespan. Simon holds an MBA from St. Antony's College, University of Oxford, where he was president and later chairman of the Oxford Society of Aging and Longevity, fostering advocacy and collaborative research in gerontology and longevity science. A serial entrepreneur, Simon has launched and advised multiple startups across frontier technologies and creative industries, including AI, digital art, music distribution, and blockchain. Passionate about scaling innovations for mass adoption, Simon believes that longevity should be accessible to billions, not just billionaires. Let's dive into a fascinating conversation with Simon Sakhai. Tell us, what are the 12 hallmarks of aging and why are they so important for everyone to understand?
I would say the 12 hallmarks of aging are probably like the big discovery that launched longevity science as we know it today. It's an understanding and a framework of thinking of aging that basically says aging, even though we use one word to describe it, it's a collection of processes that all come together that contribute to your body's decline. And this is a really powerful thing. I mean, I usually compare the 12 hallmarks of aging to the discovery of the scientific method. Because before the scientific method, we were trying to figure out, oh, well, how do we solve these problems? And we didn't have a framework, really. And then when the scientific method came around, we have a hypothesis, we test it, we look at the results, and there was this Cambrian explosion of progress that happened as a result of that. So with the 12 hallmarks of aging, you have this idea that there's this collection of mechanisms. So senescent cells, chronic inflammation, the loss of stem cells over time that will come together to cause you to age. Now, the theory is that if you can solve these 12 hallmarks, like if you can cure or fix them, you can solve aging altogether. And that's huge. Obviously, that's a long time away, but when you look at the history of medicine, the first step in solving a problem is identifying what the core issue is. This gives us as humans, as humanity, a way of saying, right, aging is complicated and it's going to be hard to cure, but if we understand like the core mechanisms that drive that process and we target them one by one and we intervene in them and we fix them, well, then we can solve aging potentially.
Can you explain the concept of hormesis and how it relates to aging? We have all these incredible phytochemicals, right? These hormetic stressors, these anthocyanins, carotenoids, flavanols, polyphenols, sulforaphane that work sort of synergistically, but there's more and more research coming out and it's so hard to differentiate the research. Can you tell us what hormesis is and why these compounds are so crucial for longevity?
Absolutely. So hormesis is one of those really funny things about biology. And it's the idea that when your body is put under some kind of stress, a adaptive mechanism takes place that makes you stronger and makes you live longer. And we see this in animals very clearly, where if we do certain things and we create certain stressors, there can be a significant lifespan extension. Some of the most interesting mechanisms or lifestyle actions that activate this this seem to be calorie restriction, intermittent fasting, cold exposure, sauna, etc., etc. And when we look at something like calorie restriction, which is the idea of like radically reducing the number of calories in your diet while still maintaining a proper healthy diet, we can see a lifespan extension in humans. And this has been shown in the calorie trial from Columbia University. Not everyone is going to want to have a calorie restriction diet. Not everyone looks great when they do a calorie restriction diet. There's some very well-known people out there that restrict their calories, and people say, oh my God, you look like a vampire. Well, that's because they're doing that for the lifespan extension. So what science is trying to do is saying, how can we hack this? How can we find a way to activate these mechanisms without having to put you through war every day? And that's where these compounds come in that mimic the effects of the hormesis or activate some of the genes and the enzymes that are seeming to cause the beneficial and therapeutic effects of those actions. So one class of enzymes that's really big are the sirtuins. Activating those has been shown to have very beneficial effects in animal models. And then upstream from that, we're able to see that certain compounds, certain polyphenols, for example, will activate sirtuins. This is where the world of supplements start to say, okay, is there a way that we can activate those mechanisms without having to put you through the drama of intermittent fasting or calorie restriction, etc.?
So fasting mimicking compounds.
Yes.
And while we're on the topic of fasting, tell us about autophagy and what is happening when we fast and when we caloric restrict or when we take these compounds, and what's happening with our cells with autophagy.
So one of the hallmarks of aging is called the loss of proteostasis. And this is the progressive decline in the ability of your body to clean up broken proteins or old cells or old organelles. Your body's like a car. As Aubrey de Grey says, your body is like a very, very complicated car, but like any car, just by naturally moving, certain things decline and degrade over time. So in your cells, you have things that go wrong, and your body has a mechanism that it uses to clean these cells up. One of them is called autophagy. Autophagy is very important. It's your body's ability to recycle the cells and clear the broken proteins and clear the broken parts, microparts of your body, essentially, to help your body function more optimally. Now, autophagy is something that is triggered under certain stress situations. Intermittent fasting and calorie restriction is one of the big ones. And then we also see it in lots of supplements that you can take, and specific molecules and compounds are shown to be very powerful and potent inducers of autophagy. So autophagy is definitely one of those words and concepts that you're going to want to become fluent in as you're embarking on a longevity lifestyle, because it really is crucial to keeping you biologically younger.
Through the process of autophagy, our cells are going through this cleaning cycle, which is cellular apoptosis, cellular biogenesis, and cellular senescence. So it's cleaning out the zombie cells and increasing your cells to die off naturally, which is cellular apoptosis, right? And building new cells, cellular biogenesis. So which compound are you most excited by that does this, that mimics this?
Well, I would say there's a couple: quercetin, fisetin, lots of polyphenols out there. Extra virgin olive oil, which has polyphenols, is really a fantastic way of inducing autophagy. That's one of the theories behind why extra virgin olive oil is so beneficial. It's because of the polyphenol content. And of course, you can get that through olive oil, or you can get that in a much more potent form by taking olive leaf extract, which actually takes a concentration on all of those beneficial polyphenols and puts them in a pill without all the fat. So, you know, a hot tip for you.
Olive leaf extract.
Yeah.
Interesting. What other extracts are you excited about? Grapeseed extract, EGCG in green tea extract?
EGCG, I take that now and again. I try not to take it ongoing because it can cause issues with your livers and kidneys. Extracts are interesting because they're usually a potent form of a certain material, but that material has lots of different things in them. So you can get an extract like grapeseed extract or olive leaf extract, which is really like all of the different polyphenols, for example, in olive oil, or you can try to isolate individual compounds. So one great example of this is the difference between pomegranate extract and urolithin A. Urolithin A is one of those compounds that we've gotten very excited about in longevity. It is shown to have lots of beneficial effects for your health. If you're weight training, it's a great idea to take urolithin A, and it's found in pomegranates. Now, there's 3 ways basically that you can get that. You can get that through pomegranates, so have lots of pomegranates. That's not always feasible, and there's lots of sugar in that, so you probably don't want to be taking large amounts of pomegranate. You can take pomegranate extract, which will be the extract of the pomegranate. That'll have a good amount of urolithin A in there, but it'll probably also have other things in there, some of which might also be really great for you. And, that's where having an extract is really great. Or you can take urolithin A directly, and the idea behind that is let's identify the actual molecule that's doing something interesting, isolate that, and give you a big dose of that. And there's lots of positives and negatives for both. Definitely in a longevity context, we do take extracts from time to time where we feel that there's lots of different beneficial compounds in a substance that we wanted to get a concentration of, but we err towards the side of what is the actual molecule that's doing this? Can we focus on that molecule and get that, isolated in its pure form? Because, pterostilbene, for example, if you wanted to get the therapeutic amount of pterostilbene in a supplement, you would need to have 20 kilos of blueberries, and you're not going to want to have 20 kilos of blueberries. So, yeah.
Pterostilbene is a compound in blueberries, which is a polyphenol?
Yes. Pterostilbene is spelled with a P, like pterodactyl. That's, you've probably heard of resveratrol. So resveratrol is a very well-known longevity compound, which has been shown to have beneficial properties in animal models. And it's become very popular. There was a lot of hype around it, 5, even 10 years ago. Lots of very well-known influencers or scientists, looking into and talking about resveratrol. The problem is resveratrol is not really bioavailable in humans. So although we see an effect in mice, and we see it working in mice, when we put it in humans, we realize that it's not actually absorbing. And this is like the Achilles heel of something like resveratrol. Now, pterostilbene is a cousin of resveratrol. It's something that not a lot of people know about, and it has all of the therapeutic benefits of resveratrol, but importantly, it's actually been shown to be bioavailable in humans. So anyone out there that's taking resveratrol right now, you should stop. Just stop. It's a waste of money. I've heard people say, oh, well, you got to mix it with some yogurt. You got to mix it with some oil. It's possible that helps with bioavailability, but I would recommend go to the pterostilbene. And back to what we were saying about inducing autophagy and having these therapeutic benefits of hormesis, pterostilbene and what resveratrol was supposed to be was supposed to be a calorie restriction mimetic, which is to say it mimics the effects of calorie restriction, the therapeutic effects of undergoing calorie restriction without you actually having to do it yourself. And it activates these sirtuins, these class of enzymes that do all sorts of really important things in your bodies, make sure DNA is being repaired properly, among other things, make sure your mitochondria is functioning properly. So yeah, big fan of pterostilbene.
You mentioned a few others. Apigenin, which I take every day. Good. Fisetin and quercetin, which I also take. Which one's your favorite? And how are these compounds different?
Which one's my favorite? Look,
or do they work synergistically?
There is no silver bullet for longevity. This is something that, I feel very strongly about, and it's very important to understand because a lot of people say, oh, what's the best compound, or what's the one compound, or what's the thing that I need to focus on? And if we go back to the 12 hallmarks of aging, we have to acknowledge that aging is a patchwork of deterioration. It's not one thing, it's a portfolio of things. So the way that you need to be thinking about health, and especially longevity, is not what's my favorite, it's how can I build a portfolio of interventions, a portfolio of different lifestyle modifications, compounds, build them all together to target all of these 12 hallmarks in every which way possible. So I'm not going to answer that because I don't want to give people the wrong impression about this stuff.
And another one is spermidine, which is a polyamine.
Yes.
What do you think of spermidine?
Love spermidine.
What's your favorite source of spermidine? Because there's a few. I take natto every day in my smoothie, fermented soy.
Yeah.
It's supposed to have a lot of natural spermidine in it.
So spermidine is a fantastic compound. It's been shown to target, I think, 9 of the hallmarks of aging. So really beneficial effects across many different pillars of what's causing you to deteriorate. And there's many different ways that you can get spermidine. You can get it naturally. You can get it in broccoli. You can get it in mushrooms. But you need to have a lot to have a therapeutic dose. That's why we supplement with spermidine. So spermidine supplements come in a variety of formats. Some of those formats are actually extracts. So you can get it from natto, you can get it from wheat germ if you're not allergic to gluten or you don't have gluten insensitivity, or you could get spermidine hydrochloride, which is lab-derived spermidine. That's my favorite. And the reason being, A, it's pure. B, in a lot of the studies that show beneficial effects of spermidine hydrochloride, it's the lab-derived spermidine that's actually being used in those studies, so you can confidently say, okay, that's the thing that's doing the good thing. And the other thing is that just on a practical level, the therapeutic amounts that you want to have for spermidine are quite high. So anywhere from a couple of milligrams of spermidine a day to I've seen like 10, 12 milligrams of spermidine a day. Now, the reason that that's important is that spermidine makes a very small amount of something like wheat germ or natto. And if you're going to supplement with a spermidine supplement that's based off wheat germ or based on natto, the likelihood is that you are taking a couple of pills and you're only at best getting like 0.5 milligram. And that's good. That's great. Spermidine is like a very powerful compound. I love it.
I was going to say 12 milligrams isn't very much, so it's powerful.
It's an incredible compound. But you're going to run into this issue of, you'll have companies that will put that in a supplement for you, but you may not be getting the therapeutic dose. And that's really because in each capsule, you can only fill 700 milligrams of space. And you might have a wheat germ extract that's only, 0.5% spermidine. And so to get 1 milligram of spermidine or they might need to have like 2 capsules. And even still, most people don't want to take more than 2 capsules of anything at a particular serving. So something to think about.
Another compound which has a lot of emerging research and excitement around is taurine.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us about taurine.
Taurine's super interesting.
I take it every day before I work out.
Okay, you take it before you work out. It's interesting because taurine could be taken in the day and it could be taken at night. And it seems to just be like a plug and play athlete. You plug it into your body and it just makes your body better in some way, whether that's trying to get you to have more energy or trying to get you sleep better. So taurine is really fantastic if you combine it with caffeine because it basically helps to modulate and smooth out the jittery experience that you have with caffeine.
Like L-theanine?
Exactly, just like L-theanine. But taurine is also fantastic for sleep. But why are we talking about taurine? We're talking about it because last year it was discovered that taurine declines as you age. And this was a really big study, came out of Columbia University, and we're seeing that this decline in taurine is quite significant and profound and makes us think that supplementing for taurine can be very beneficial for longevity. So I like to take taurine at night with my sleep stack. It helps me get a better sleep. I don't know why. Taurine is just one of those things that have really worked for me and worked for a lot of people that I know. But that's the beauty of longevity science. We are learning new things every day. A recommendation that was made 2 years ago is literally already out of date. It's very interesting because, we were talking about the hallmarks of aging. Up until 2022, there were 9 hallmarks of aging. And it was in 2022 that it officially expanded to 12 hallmarks of aging. So if you were trying to create a program that targeted all hallmarks of aging in 2021 or 2022, the likelihood is that you were missing out on new hallmarks that hadn't come out yet. And the science has moved beyond that. And I even see out there a lot of products or supplements even that were developed in 2021 that claim to target all 12 hallmarks of aging, but were formulated before those hallmarks were even established as hallmarks. So you got to stay up to date. You've got to constantly evolve. You've got to make sure that you're reading the literature, which I know is a lot of work. But if you really want the best of longevity science, you need to keep abreast with everything that's happening.
NAD plus, NAD. What's the difference between NAD, NAD plus? It's such a hot thing right now with Justin Bieber and Kendall Jenner. What's the difference between injectable fat adipose injections, sub-Q, versus the intravenous NAD and the precursors, nicotinamide mononucleotide, nicotinamide riboside? So what is nicotinamide adenine-dinucleotide?
All right, so NAD, one of my favorite topics. It's one of my favorite topics because I love debunking NAD. Everyone's gotten so excited about NAD as if it's this magic bullet for longevity. And really, I take it back to this idea that aging is a patchwork of deterioration. Mitochondrial dysfunction is one of the 12 hallmarks. So mitochondria, they're the powerhouse of the cell. NAD are essential parts of making sure that your body's able to produce and use energy. So it's a very important mechanism. However, solving NAD or boosting NAD is going to be a very small part of your overall strategy. So for all of the people out there that are really hyper-focused on NAD and is NAD going to cure aging, it's not in the way that we're hoping. However, it's still important. Now, the other thing I'd say about NAD, there's been a lot of hype around NMN and NR, rightfully. You know, they're great compounds. They have been shown to boost NAD levels. It seems to work differently for different people. And so I would definitely recommend maybe taking a test to measure your NAD levels and see how they're changing based on what you're taking. But NMN, NR, they're B vitamins, which B vitamins just sound less sexy because they're like, oh, vitamin A, C, B. I've heard of that in grade school. But B vitamins, all of them really boost their precursors and really help boost NAD levels. And there's one in particular that I'm a huge fan of called niacin. Niacin is something that you've probably seen before. It is one of the most well-studied compounds. It's been around forever, and it really has a broad range of benefits to your health, broad cardiovascular benefits, and it's the only compound that's literally been shown to cure NAD deficiency in humans. A little goes a long way with
That's
niacin.
B3.
It's a form of B3. So NMN, NR, niacin, they're all forms of B3. And in my opinion, niacin it's the cheapest, it's the easiest to come by. A little goes a long way. But the caveat here is it's part of a broader portfolio. It's not something that you can just take and expect to, suddenly age backwards. It's part of a larger portfolio. Last thing I'll say about niacin that's really interesting. I just found out about this. I was talking to Dr. Oz Garcia, and he was telling me that the founder of AA used or credits niacin as the way that's something that really helped him get over his own addiction. And there's all of this research and thinking around the use of niacin to help treat various addictions. Now,
Ibogaine.
Like Ibogaine, exactly.
What addiction was it? Do you know?
I'm assuming alcoholism, but I looked into it and it was legit. And he even wanted to set up a fund specifically to research niacin for addiction. Having said that, in large doses, it's been shown to be problematic. So, anything more than 1 gram a day, you definitely don't want to have that, even though in some cases doctors will prescribe larger amounts. So keep it low. A little goes a long way. But if you prefer NMN, NR, yeah. NAD drips, so getting like one of those bags, tying it to your bloodstream. A couple of interesting things with that. One, the reason we take a precursor as opposed to straight NAD is because NAD is very unstable and it needs to be kept in certain environments and able to stay true to form. So it needs to be refrigerated, needs to whatever. So the supply chain behind whatever pure NAD you're getting needs to be really exceptional in the hopes that it actually still is NAD by the time it enters your bloodstream. So that's one issue. Two, there's a difference between NAD floating around in your bloodstream and NAD ending up in your cells.
I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. And where they need
Getting
to
into
be.
the cytoplasm of the cell.
Exactly. And what we see when we inject something into the bloodstream is that it goes into the bloodstream. Humans did not evolve to absorb nutrients directly through the bloodstream. The skin is a barrier. It's designed to keep everything out. The way that we evolved to take in nutrients is in our stomach. goes in our stomach and in our digestive system. And then it's, the digestive system senses what is this and where does it need to go? And it sends it there. So I prefer supplementation to drips, even though a lot of people are, big fans of drips, because when you supplement, it's going through your digestive system, it's ending up in the cells, it's actually, it's taking your body where it needs to go to increase those NAD levels systemically. And that's what you want.
Interesting. I noticed that when I switched from GHKCU sub-Q injection to GHKCU oral.
Really?
Yeah, my friend who's a gut health expert, he noticed a difference between sub-Q injection of BPC 157 and oral on help strengthening his gut lining.
And he found that it was more positive with oral? Interesting. I'm not surprised to hear that.
Sourcing, yeah. And how does niacin work synergistically with apigenin?
Yes.
To increase NAD?
Great question. So there are lots of things that can boost NAD levels. There are precursors like NMN, NR, niacin, but there's lots of other mechanisms that are upstream of your NAD production or involved in the process of creating NAD. Now, there's this enzyme in your body called CD38. CD38 is a very prevalent in your body and is one of those enzymes that eats up NAD. So it's in your body constantly eating up NAD. And it's almost like, think of it as if you've got a bucket of water and it's like a hole in the bucket, right? So there you are trying to pour water in it, and then all of this NAD is coming out. So apigenin is really interesting because it doesn't boost NAD levels, but it actually helps clear the CD38 that is using up a lot of the NAD that you could be using elsewhere. So I think that if you want a NAD protocol, choose your poison. Choose your NAD booster, add apigenin into it, because that's really going to make sure that when your body is producing that additional NAD, it's not just being mopped up by CD38.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Take it at night.
Take apigenin at night?
Take apigenin at night. This is a really important idea. When we're looking at a compound, there's lots of endpoints and there's lots of benefits. And when we're talking about longevity or we're talking about very specific mechanisms, it's very easy to say, oh, apigenin, it blocks CD38, or berberine, it modulates longevity genes or proteins. Now, they have dual effects. There's lots more that something like berberine or something like apigenin do. So in the case of apigenin, great for sleep. Amazing for sleep. I could have told you to take apigenin just for sleep and you would have never had to know about CD38. Same with berberine. Berberine helps manage blood sugar levels. It's been shown to be as effective as metformin in multiple trials in managing those blood sugar levels. So I think when you're looking at supplements or when you're learning about them, it's very important because you'll be listening to a podcast or you'll be listening to an influencer say, hey, like we've seen this compound have this very specific effect, but they're highlighting just one effect and there will be other effects. Now, some of those other effects could be really great for you, but it may be that you might not want those secondary effects. In the example of berberine, if you're hypoglycemic, you probably don't want to be taking a blood sugar stabilizing formula. If you're diabetic or you're already on metformin, you're not going to be want to taking that stuff. So super important to understand dual effects. And I see a lot of people out there taking these very narrow views of individual supplements and just saying, hey, take these 50 supplements all at once because each one does these very specific mechanisms without taking into account the secondary and tertiary outcomes of each of those supplements, because those secondary or tertiary outcomes might all be like at odds with each other. So there might be supplements that help make you feel more energized. Well, you don't want that at night. You don't want to be taking that at night just before you go to bed. There are some supplements that are going to calm you down or make you
Supplement
more
journal.
Yeah, it's timing. Timing is so important.
Writing down what works and what not, what keeps you up at night, which is what I did. What I've noticed about apigenin, it turns off my motor neurons. Like it makes me, like my prefrontal cortex, it helps me stop thinking before I go to sleep. Like it just calms me down. So, but I didn't know it had that positive effect to NAD. Interesting. Well, while we're on the subject of sugars, how do sugars impact longevity?
Man, sugar is the new smoking. You know, I think in 10, 20 years, we're going to be looking back and we're going to say, how did like smoking in airplanes or smoking in office, like how did we do that? How did we actually allow sugar to become such a mainstay of our diets? Now, sugar isn't inherently evil. It's the amount of sugar we're having and the way that we're having sugars and processed carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates that is evil. Evil, evil, evil. And if you look at blue zone diets, there's lots of theories about why blue zone diets are so successful. Like what are these people eating that are making them live so long? But when you look across many different blue zones, you notice different ingredients. So it could be hard to say like, what's the magic bullet? One of the consistent things across all blue zones, if you look at their diets, it's very little sugar. And when they have carbohydrates, they're complex carbohydrates that are buried in vegetables or legumes that are very slow absorbing carbohydrates that mean that they're not getting the amount of sugars or carbohydrates that we're getting in our modern Western diet. So I would say like, if you want to know like the secret of the blue zone diets, one of those secrets is really thinking carefully about your sugar intake and your carbohydrate intake. We have way too much sugar in our modern society. Sugary drinks, all processed foods have so much sugar in them that just make like things taste better, but you don't even realize they're there. Sauces, ketchup, stuff. I mean, I love ketchup. Don't get me wrong. This is really tough for me to say, but the truth is it's poison. So yeah, and there's two ways that you could think about sugars. One, glucose, I should say, because glucose is downstream of sugars and carbohydrates. One, having too much sugars seems to cause lots of problems. It could make you diabetic. It could cause you to reduce insulin sensitivity. It reduces your metabolic flexibility. Inflammation, chronic inflammation, exactly. There's all of these terrible things that happen with having lots of glucose. However, conversely, we were talking about what are things that we can activate, or what are lifestyle things that activate longevity producing mechanisms in your body. And glucose restriction seems to, when you restrict glucose and when you restrict carbohydrates, it actually seems to turn on certain proteins and enzymes that are beneficial for longevity. So for example, the FOXO protein, or there's a protein that gets activated that helps protect your telomeres. These literally get turned on when you're restricting the carbs or protein. So I'm not saying everyone go on Atkins right now, but we can very clearly see having a lot of it is bad for you. Restricting it actually takes you beyond just being healthy.
Interesting. How important is sleep for longevity? And do you have any tips for improving sleep?
Man, so sleep is the number one performance enhancer. If you want to move the needle on your entire life, and I mean your entire life, your health, your mental health, your relationships, your work, your career, like literally, the best medicine to take is a good night of sleep. It is the foundation of pretty much every physiological or metabolic or cognitive process. There's an issue though, and the issue is that sleep is complex. And there isn't that, people know that sleep is important, but people don't have sleep literacy, because when they say the word sleep, they think sleep is one thing, but sleep is actually a very complex experience or mechanism that has many different subparts. And there's a couple of ways that I can describe this that I think will shed light on what I mean. One, sleep disorders are all completely different from each other. So yes, we know that sleep is important, but lots of people struggle with sleep. And again, we run into this issue where they struggle with sleep, they struggle with this one word we use to describe it. But sleep disorders come in many, many different shapes and sizes. And people don't have the literacy to understand that different disorders mean different things. So some people have insomnia, some people have sleep apnea, some people have restless leg syndrome, some people have neurological disorders. And the reason that's important is that, let's say, sleep apnea and insomnia, as an example, they're as different from each other physiologically as a headache is to a broken bone. Like if you had a broken bone and I were like, Ben, you want to treat that broken bone? Take headache medicine. You'd think it would be absurd because you know it was two different things. And what we have right now is this collective understanding sleep is this one monolith and problems being this one problem. And they're not. And so I would say the first tip to getting better sleep is to really do your homework and learn more about what could be going wrong with your sleep, because it's not just about how quickly you fall asleep. It's not just about how long you fall asleep. There are all all of these things that could be happening while you sleep that are affecting your life. So sleep apnea, for example, it's interesting. It's basically this obstructive thing in your nasal pathways that make it difficult to breathe while you sleep. So you're literally not getting oxygen, which, as you can imagine, it's not great for you. And people don't diagnose for it. You have a lot of people that get terrible sleep. They have no idea why, because they're getting 8 hours. They're using their blue light blocking glasses. They're making their rooms cold. They're doing everything that, everyone sort of knows to do for sleep. And they wake up exhausted and they're miserable throughout the day. But when you speak to dentists, weirdly enough, dentists are the place where most of the time you get diagnosed with sleep apnea, because they look in your throat and they could see that, that opening isn't that big. And so you have a lot of dentists telling the story of, I had a patient and I said, hey, do you snore a lot at night? Do you have difficulty with sleep? And they're like, yeah. And then they go and they get diagnosed, and then they get treated for it, and they come back and they say, I'm a new person. I was always cranky. I was always moody. I was depressed and I had no idea why. And I was taking pills and I was doing this and it just wasn't working. And I had no idea that I had this issue with my sleep, and it's literally changed their lives. So I would say sleep literacy is really important. You know, the idea that like Eskimos have 26 different words for snow, right? And we just use the word snow. And there really is a difference between sleet and whatever the other words are.
Powder.
Yeah. Sleep Sleep literacy, very important. The other thing I would say about sleep is that from a longevity perspective, you have some of the most powerful regenerative mechanisms that are happening at night. When we're talking about longevity, regeneration is the name of the game, right? Like what we're trying to do with longevity is to literally regenerate and rejuvenate you. And if you were to think what is like nature's regeneration miracle, it's sleep. We do it every night. And now back to this issue of semantics and this idea of sleep being a complex process. When we're talking about sleep, most people think about length of sleep, or they think about onset of sleep. So how quickly was I able to fall asleep? How long did I sleep? What time did I sleep? You know, this is what a lot of people really think about. But actually, there's this whole other story, sort of vaguely, called sleep architecture, which is really the quality of sleep. This is the amount of deep sleep you're getting, the amount of REM sleep, the rhythms associated and how those rhythms interact with each other. And when you're talking about sleep architecture and when you're trying to solve sleep for regenerative mechanisms, you're really looking at a different endpoint. So, probably my last advice, my big tip on sleep is supplementing. And you need to be really careful when you're supplementing for sleep, because a lot of sleep supplements are sedatives, and you'll feel it, you'll take it and you'll feel like zonked out. It'll make you want to go to sleep. That doesn't actually, the endpoint there is not regeneration. The endpoint is to get you unconscious. And what's worse, that can create dependency. It creates psychological dependency. And insomnia is actually a psychological issue. The only treatment for insomnia, the only medically validated treatment for insomnia, it's not a pill. It's CBT-based therapy that changes your perception or your perceptual relationship to sleep. So I would, I'm a big fan of supplements for sleep, but supplements specifically geared towards regenerative mechanisms that are happening while you sleep, because there are things happening. There's tissue being repaired, there's DNA being repaired, there's muscles being rebuilding. So if you're going to supplement for sleep, take supplements that are geared towards those. What are those? Magnesium, zinc, B6 in its proper form, which helps unlock the magnesium.
Which magnesium?
I really like magnesium chelate. It's highly bioavailable for most people, and it's like a broad spectrum that includes the different types of magnesium. A lot of people get very religious about which magnesium. I think it really just has to come down to bioavailability, and magnesium chelate seems to be, the chelated magnesium seems to be the most bioavailable. So I like that personally. Glycine is a really amazing compound for sleep. It's also a really amazing compound for tissue repair, skin. It's shown tremendous lifespan increase in model organisms. And interestingly, I just found out in the former USSR, they used to make kids take glycine. It was known as like the Superman supplement. And we're only just beginning to like put that in our longevity stacks today. So yeah, those are my tips for sleep.
And apigenin.
And apigenin, yes, exactly. Apigenin. Then there's other stuff. Then there's the whole question around circadian rhythm and circadian aging. So every organism evolved around the day and night of the sun. That's insane. Literally, every single organism, every cell, every mechanism is timed in connection to this day-night cycle that we have. And in humans, we have the circadian rhythm. And when people think circadian rhythm, they think sleep. But circadian rhythm is not sleep. Circadian rhythm is literally your timekeeper. It is your internal clock, and it's the maestro telling your body what it should be doing and when, which is to say, in the day, you feel this way, and there are these mechanisms happening, and at night, there are these mechanisms happening. So circadian rhythm is a 24-hour cycle.
Catabolic, anabolic.
Exactly. And as you age, your circadian rhythm dysregulates. And so you've probably seen, or when you think of a circadian rhythm, you could think of a graph where you have peaks and troughs, right? And in the day, you have high energy levels, and at night, you have, your body knows that it's time to sleep. It's really good to have high peaks, low troughs, because it means you have high energy, or your body is tired and wants to go to sleep. And so you're getting deep, restful sleep, or you're on peak performance during the day. Unfortunately, as you age, your circadian rhythm dysregulates. If you want my opinion, I think circadian dysregulation is going to become a hallmark of aging, because we see that with circadian dysregulation, your entire body goes out of whack. All the mechanisms are firing at the wrong time. You're getting poorer sleep, and you're not regenerating properly. Now, the reason I bring this up is melatonin. People seem to be obsessed with melatonin. And granted, melatonin does decline as you age, and it has been called a longevity drug by some people, and I don't disagree with that.
Because it's an anti-inflammatory as well.
It's also an anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant.
Exactly.
It seems to do a lot of important things other than signal to your body it's time for bed. The problem with melatonin, there are many problems with melatonin. One, melatonin hangover.
Groggy in the morning.
You feel groggy. You feel terrible the next day. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Like, what's the point of sedating you to go to sleep, if you're going to feel shitty the next day? There's no point. So lots of people are experiencing melatonin hangovers. The other thing, which is really odd, is that for whatever reason, supplement companies find it impossible to precisely dose the amount of melatonin in their supplements. So it's so funny, like everyone's like, oh my God, is your NMN high purity? Is your NMN high purity? And they're like obsessed. Like, I want to make sure it's pure. Well, basic things don't have high purity, like your melatonin. And they've done third-party tests on some of the biggest melatonin supplements out there. And it could say 2 milligrams, it could say 5 milligrams, and it's always completely out of whack. And that's really dangerous, because actually you shouldn't be taking a lot of melatonin, and you shouldn't take large amounts of melatonin long-term, maybe half a milligram. Okay, if you're older, I'd say take half a milligram on a daily basis, but then your body doesn't know what it's getting each time, and that's not really good. And the other thing is really the question of like, is your body, this is a hormone, and by introducing this hormone, is your body going to somehow get used to it? Is it going to change your physiology? Is it going to do something that we don't want? I don't think that there's enough data for that yet. So
apparently it suppresses your androgens, a male's androgens.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of data emerging on that topic right now. So I would say hold off on the melatonin. What I like instead are natural sources of melatonin, or things that help your body produce melatonin. So if you look upstream, tryptophan 10, 20 years ago, super popular supplement, really great for sleep. It has all of these benefits. For me, it's been like a huge game changer. I'm a big fan of tryptophan, and it is a melatonin precursor. So when you take it, it helps your body produce the melatonin it needs, rather than exogenously introducing a melatonin that might potentially mess up your sleep rhythm, mess up your circadian rhythm, signal, your body in a way that's, it shouldn't be signaled. But yeah, having said that, melatonin is great for when you travel. Like, if you use it carefully, and if you need to reset your biological clock to adjust to a new time zone, melatonin is really powerful, but I would say very short instances, and not something that you just take because you want to get knocked out. Sorry, lots on sleep there.
No, it's perfect. I did notice a differentiation between the melatonin here and in Paris.
Interesting.
Because I tried to get my circadian clock back on European time, and I was getting some good sleep scores from using the melatonin over there. When I use it over here, I feel groggy in the morning.
Interesting.
And then over there, I felt groggy in the morning, but I had high REM and high deep. And I feel like it's more pure in Europe because it's more regulated.
And
then,
the French just do everything better, don't they?
yeah, they have better taste and everything, even supplements. And I had to use it. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't turn my brain off 2 nights ago. And so I had to use it last night. I used it at like 7 p.m. I slept from 7 p.m. until 6 a.m. this morning.
Oh,
And
the dream.
I had high REM, high deep. My issue with sleep is my restfulness. So I use this Bear Bee blanket, this weighted blanket, but I notice it annoys my hip and to switch back and forth from laying on my back to my side. So I wish there was a blanket that was light and then turned heavy while you sleep to keep you stuck while you sleep.
That's smart. That's smart. Like it sort of like feeds water into it. Yeah, it
somehow.
like takes it. That's really smart.
Yeah. Because I skip higher REM and higher deep.
Can we cut that out of this and then like produce that together? Because
I was just thinking of it when you were talking about sleep, and I was like, this would be a great product. Sleep trackers. What's your favorite? What are the metrics you use and to analyze your sleep score and optimize your sleep score, and the differences between each tracker?
Oh man, sleep trackers. So I have a sleep tracker. Everyone I know has a sleep tracker. I'm not a fan of sleep trackers. I am not a fan of sleep trackers because the point is to get better sleep. And unfortunately, sleep trackers can lead to the deterioration of your experience around sleep. And what does that mean? So if we go back to insomnia, which is the number one sleep disorder, it's the number one people have issues with, which is insomnia essentially is an unhealthy psychological relationship with your sleep, where your body and your mind primarily is so anxious or so obsessed with this issue of falling asleep that it can't. And so it is really, that's why CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is the only medically validated cure for insomnia. So you could take a sedative, like you could take an Ambien and you can go to sleep, but that's not curing your insomnia. That's putting you to sleep. And so your psychological relationship to sleep is really important. And it's one of these things where the harder you try, almost the worse it can get. The more obsessive you can become and the more worried that you become around your sleep, the worse your experience and your relationship to sleep gets. How do I know this? Well, because I have a sleep tracker. And when I have a sleep tracker, my life is miserable. Because the first thing I do every morning is I read my score. And even though I'm aware of this, even though I'm an expert in the field, I know the cognitive bias I'm going to have. I've done all of the work of saying, right, well, you've seen that number, but that's just a number. It really influences how I'm going, the decisions I'm going to make for the rest of the day, or how I'm going to feel the rest of the day. So if I get a shitty sleep score, I'm not going to go to the gym, or I'm going to use it as an excuse to not train as hard.
I practiced that yesterday. I saw a bad sleep score and I felt miserable all day. And then on the way home from this clinic, this scan I had, I told myself I had a great score today. I used this placebo I just told myself I have a great score today. I was able to come back and get some work done. And then I did feel groggy, so I just crashed early. But I use this kind of technique, but
I'm gonna have to try that, like more brain coaching around like my daytime sleep thing. Yeah. I think it's good for self-experimentation. I think definitely get a sleep tracker, get it for a period of time to help you understand what your rhythms are and what your, generally, what works for you and what doesn't, because everyone's different, but don't use it over the long term. Here's a great study actually that I think about a lot. So basically they took a bunch of people and they said, you're going to sleep overnight here and tomorrow, and they had separate rooms for everyone, and we're going to give you a cognitive ability test tomorrow, right? So already people are thinking, oh man, I'm going to take a cognitive ability test tomorrow. Oh my God. And I'm going to sleep here. And they're told that this is the study, that you're just going to take a cognitive test. But in order to do that, you have to sleep here. What they didn't know is that the group was split into 2 cohorts. One cohort was seated, and they took their phones and everything away. One cohort was seated clocks in the room where the clocks went very fast. So at 11 p.m. it said 1 a.m., right? Or at 1 a.m. it said 5 a.m., something absurd. And in the other room, they gave normal clocks. So these people are sitting there without their phones. And really one of the only references they have is what time is it? Because I don't know what the outside world is. They all go to sleep. On average, they get the same number of hours of sleep, but half perceived to get less sleep, because obviously if you think that you slept at 3 and you're waking up at 8, you're going to be like, oh my God, I only got 5 hours of sleep. So the ones that perceived to get less sleep did dramatically worse on the cognitive test than the other cohort. And this is just really a testament to how important perception is, and perception of your sleep is to how you actually operate and function as a person. And the thing with these sleep trackers is they don't take in all the data that's related to your sleep, right? Like it's not an EEG. And there are certain things that, in order to measure, you really need like a full lab. I like them. They're not everything. Take it with a grain of salt. Data is great. And in our modern longevity world or biohacking world, of course, data is king, but sometimes data can blind you, right? And data can be really dangerous because you can fixate on a specific biomarker or a specific number and use that to ignore all sorts of other things. And that could be really dangerous. So take your sleep tracker with a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm obviously wearing a ring. I think you can guess which one.
Back to sleep apnea. I don't drink anymore, but when I used to drink, my girlfriend would tell me that I snore when I drink, when we go out and party. And when I'm in yoga class, I keep my mouth closed because you're only supposed to breathe through your nose. And I'm much louder than everyone else. And I've had people next to me say, you breathe through your nose very loud. And when I was younger, my brother and I used to wrestle and fight a lot. So I think I have some damage in my nose. So I'm seeing an ENT to clear out the cartilage in my nose so I'm able to breathe better at night. Because right now I use 2 different devices to open up my nostrils when I sleep, and I mouth tape, but I'm pretty excited about this procedure.
Interesting. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for you. You're going to feel like a different person because you're going to get more oxygen at night, right?
Yeah. I think I have broken cartilage in my nose. I just want to take a quick moment and thank all of you for watching and supporting and listening. Your support means the world to us. And if you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with anyone you think would love it. Thank you. There's an amazing documentary right now on blue zones. You're a longevity expert. What are your thoughts on the documentary? I found it fascinating. It touched on a lot of social aspects and a few different plants and tubers. The Japanese, they eat this sweet potato. That was interesting. What are your thoughts on the documentary and overall the blue zones and that topic?
So I think blue zones are remarkable, right? They're places that have abnormally long lifespans randomly. And we're like, what is going on here? And I loved the Blue Zone documentary. However, I think there's lots of issues with the Blue Zone documentary and some things that sort of bothered me. One, I felt like, one of the main takeaways was this idea that there are these idyllic places around the world where people lead stress-free, happy lives and people live longer. And that's not rocket science and it's not feasible. Right? Like it's just not feasible. And I feel like, the overall message was, look at Icaria in Greece, look at Sardinia, look at these beautiful places where people live close to the earth and have backyards. And, there was this one scene where this guy in Costa Rica was like, 1,000 years old.
He's 100 years old and he's riding a horse and
he's riding a horse.
Like he's 30 years old.
And then they're asking him like, what'll happen if you get sick? And he says, oh, I don't know. Haha. And he laughs it off. And that really triggered me, right? Because the people who are watching that documentary are living very different lives and they have very different restraints. So you ask someone in America what they do if they get sick and they don't have health insurance, they're fucked, right? Like they can't just laugh it off. They're suddenly in debt. And they literally can't live. I don't know what rent prices are in Sardinia or Okinawa or Costa Rica or Loma Linda even, but I promise you, they're not New York City prices. They're not LA prices. The unfortunate truth is modern society is demanding. Simply to wake up costs you resources. And that puts a lot of pressure on people. And people have careers, people have passions, they have things that they want to achieve in the world. I don't know, it sort of rubs me the wrong way to go around telling people that, if you just give all that up, you'll live longer. And so, where does that leave us? I don't know. I
guess it's like, what are the takeaways and how can we mimic that in today's society?
Exactly.
So yoga every night before you go to sleep, a yoga practice for me, increasing, your parasympathetic system, rest and digest before you go to sleep helps me tremendously. Like increases my sleep score, a mindfulness practice, meditation. You like meditation. So I guess not giving it up everything and going and starting a farm next door. But I guess the takeaways are decreasing stress, right? What else?
And I think that's the key, right? Like, what's the DNA of the blue zones, which is, I think the documentary did a great job of doing. And I think it's a really great question to ask, like, what can we extract here and apply in your lifestyle? So definitely exercise, and maybe not the type of weight training that happens at Equinox. Even just constant movement into old age is really important for you. Walking is medicine, right? Like, you keep hearing from all of these blue zones, like all these older people just walking around, going up hills. And sadly, in America, like, our cities just aren't built that way. Your car, you get in the driveway, you sit in the car, you drive somewhere, you get out. Like,
we live longer in New York City because we walk more.
Yes.
Have you seen those? Research?
Although I think that's going to be changing in New York, because New York is expanding so much. It's like turning into LA or Beijing. It used to be a place where everyone lived really concentrated, let's say in Manhattan, and now people are moving into Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey. So of course you'll always have to walk in New York, but looking into the next like 10 years of New York, I definitely, I'm saddened by this idea that it's not going to be the type of walking city, strolling city that it used to, where you just sort of walk everywhere and see your friends around. Anyways.
What else can we take away from the blue zones? Polyphenol-rich diet. Phytonutrient-rich diet.
Yeah. Managing blood sugar, of course. Like, if you look at everything that they're eating, there's not that many sugars. It's all very natural. Lots of beans, lots of legumes. Social relationships. That's a really big one. And I worry about that one. I worry about that one, because I'm an introvert. And, I'm very busy and I don't always have the time to invest in my social life. I like to spend time alone reading and thinking. And when you look at the blue zones, you see what's actually really beneficial for longevity is like being out there and being connected to people. So on a personal level, I'm like, I need to change something. But what's more scary is what's happening generationally, and the sort of loneliness epidemic that's sweeping across the world, the way social media feeds into that, this growing isolation and this inability for society to bring people together to meaningfully connect. It's really scary. There's this concept called social snacking. There's a therapeutic benefit to social connection. So just by connecting and being with your loved ones, it's almost like taking some sort of pill. It's like some kind of medicine. There's a scientist in Oxford who is world renowned on the concept of loneliness, and he made this idea of social snacking, where we go on social media and there's like this fake feeling of connection that we get, and we snack on it, but we're not actually getting nutrients. So it's almost like having candy every meal instead of having any real nutrients. And so I see younger people growing up like that. You see the rates of depression, you see the rates of loneliness, and this is a health epidemic. And I'm glad that this Blue Zone documentary came out and was able to really call that out as a type of drug, to think about it like that.
What's your morning routine, and how do you set yourself up for a healthy day?
Some of the best advice I can give to people is, where possible, don't look at your phone when you wake up. Oh man. So I have a dog. And I'm really lucky that I have a dog.
Yeah, circadian rhythm optimization right there.
Exactly. You get me. I don't look at my phone. I walk my dog and I get out, and I'm out for like at least 20 minutes, if not 40 minutes. And I'm out there in the sky, whatever it is, and I'm walking. And I'm using movement, and I'm not listening to music. I'm not looking at my phone. I'm not getting any dopamine hits. I'm just letting my mind rest and do its thing in the morning. So I do that. I won't eat because I intermittent fast, or right now I'm intermittent fasting. I'm doing like a couple months on. I have my supplement routine, which, as you can imagine, is a whole thing. I've got like my really embarrassing lab kits of all different pills and bottles and this and that. And yeah, I would say honestly, walking the dog is the biggest and best part of my morning. Just getting that, half an hour walking, seeing the sun, resetting my circadian rhythm. Everyone should have a dog. And if you don't, maybe you should take my dog and walk them. He's available, birthdays, special occasions, whatever.
When do you, how long do you go without ingesting caffeine in the morning? So
caffeine and coffee in general is a funny one. Coffee has been shown to have lots of great things and lots of great polyphenols and lots of therapeutic qualities to coffee. So coffee is great. However, I think coffee should be used sparingly. And in America, people use and abuse coffee and caffeine in general. And it could lead to, something quite serious called adrenal fatigue, where basically you're always on edge. You're pumping your body full of the stuff that's just going to make you feel, whatever, but then you're exhausting your adrenal system. And that's really bad for you physiologically. So you get, lots of people when they have coffee repeatedly over a long time, they'll say, oh, God, I don't even know if I've had too little coffee or too much coffee. I just feel like shit. And that's probably a sign that you should completely cut it out, or at least cut it out for a period of time so that your body resets. One of the other issues with coffee is that you never know what caffeine content you're going to be getting. It's not precise. So, one morning you could be having a cup and there could be, 60 milligrams, 80 milligrams, another it could be 200 milligrams. And if you're someone like us who really wants to be precise about what's going in their body and when, that's not a good thing. So I'm actually a fan of caffeine supplementation rather than taking coffee where possible, if you want that energy boost. The other thing, mental health. Mental health is so important, and it's becoming more important. More people are talking about it. I would say probably one of the most low-key drivers of anxiety is coffee, because it basically just amplifies your thinking mechanisms. And you have to understand that anxiety is by its nature an amplification mechanism, where your body will take something in your mind will take something in your life, an issue, a problem, a mistake, and it will fixate on it and it will continue thinking about it. So the thing is real, but the amplification mechanism causes that thing to go out of proportion in your head. That's why it's so hard to deal with anxiety, because there's always a seed of truth. There's always this, oh, well, that thing really happened, so it has to be right, or my feelings have to be valid. Well, no, they're not valid, because your body has amplified them out of proportion. What does caffeine do? It amplifies them. It amplifies whatever feelings you're having at any given time. So a lot of people don't think about caffeine in this way or coffee in that way, especially when you're doing intermittent fasting, bringing it full circle. You're putting your body under a lot of stress. Your hormones are probably going out of whack. You are anxious because you don't have food. You're groggy, you're hungry. And of course, when you have the coffee, it'll stave off the hunger. It's really powerful in that way. But you're also putting your body under more stress, where if you're not eating, your body's already anxious, and then you're throwing caffeine in that mix, and it can take you places. So in my practice, I do caffeine detoxes, for months at a time to sort of just give my body a reset. And I also do intermittent fasting detoxes just to make sure that I'm recalibrating. What I've noticed is if I'm doing months and months and months of consistent intermittent fasting plus caffeine together, I'm just on edge. And you don't realize it because you get so used to it. People forget what calm feels like. So yeah.
Yeah, true. Speaking of calm, you meditate.
Yes. Yeah.
Which method?
So I trained in 2 methods. I did Vipassana, which are those 10-day silent retreats. And those are mindfulness based. So breath and body sensation based methods. And I also did TM, Transcendental Meditation, which is mantra based. I like both. I would say TM, which is where you have a mantra that you repeatedly say, is great because it gives your mind something to focus on, and it gives your mind something to do. If you want to calm down, or if you want to immediately, just get calm, it's good. But I actually think breath-based, so focusing on your breathing or focusing on your body sensations or mindfulness, is far more powerful, especially when you combine that with Buddhist philosophy, which is all about the dissolution of the ego and a wider understanding of why your sense of self is sort of made up, and how your relationship to yourself is the root cause of all of your suffering. That's a big statement, and that's a whole other podcast. But essentially, one of the most powerful benefits of mindfulness that people do is stress, right? It reduces stress, reduces anxiety, reduces depression. Why does it do that? Well, from a Buddhist standpoint, what you're basically saying is everything is meaningless to a certain extent. My body, my sense of self, my relationship to myself, my life is part of this wider thing that's happening. And if I experience anger or sadness or frustration or from craving something, the idea is that the root of all suffering is craving or aversion. So you either want something that feels good or if you're avoiding something that feels bad. And what you do when you meditate is, through a Buddhist lens, you say that, oh, that's just my ego. And I'm separate to my ego. I'm separate to this body. I'm something else. And so you're able to create a space between you and the thing that's experiencing that pain or experiencing that desire, those things that are really driving your behaviors, those animal-like feelings. And so you're able to think more clearly, and sort of the stress and the anxiety fizzle away, because you can realize like, oh, well, that's not me. That's just this body. That's this experience. Whereas I don't feel like TM has that same intellectual framework attached to it. So yeah, I'd highly recommend one of those 10-day retreats. Amazing, life-changing.
Where did you do yours?
I did them in the UK. Not in some beautiful place in Bali or India. It's the beauty of like real meditation retreats, is that your eyes are closed most of the time. It doesn't matter where you are. Of course, it would be nice, if mentally that you're in a warm location with a beach. But if you're really doing meditation correctly, it doesn't matter where you are, because your eyes are closed. But yeah, I did them in the UK. I did a couple in the UK, a couple of 10-day ones, a couple of 3-day ones.
I did Bali silent retreat.
Was it 10 days? Was
10
it
days.
Vipassana?
You wake up. I don't know the method, but it was you wake up but with a gong in the morning with birds, just and animal life, just extremely loud as your alarm clock with the sun coming through the jungle. It's incredible. You sleep in a net. You go to the circle 3 times a day together. You do yoga and meditation, and then make tea from the garden.
Did you enjoy not talking?
I did, but I was with a friend who didn't enjoy it at all. So we left early, actually. So I want to go solo next time. How do you see the field of longevity evolving in the next decades?
That's the $100 million question. All right. So everyone's getting very excited about longevity, where the research is going, what's on the pipeline, AI and drug discovery. It's very exciting. I'm probably most excited about gene editing and the opportunity to really affect the makeup of how our bodies work. I think that's just mind-blowing that's even something that we're doing already, and it's working. Like, there are therapies that cure ocular degeneration and those things exactly. And I think when we're talking about longevity, there's this idea of radical life extension. And radical life extension is this idea of Benjamin Button, or, suddenly adding 50 years to your life. And where I see the most promise are things like gene therapies. Having said that, I do think that we're a long ways away. It's going to take some time for us to get to a place where we have something like that. I would say at least 5 years, if not 10 or 15, before there's really something remarkable. So the truth is that a lot of these breakthroughs aren't going to happen for, 5, if not 10 or 15 years, which is great, because all you need to do is stay alive until then, and then you can benefit. However, what it means between now and then, what we're talking about when we're talking about longevity, is all of the stuff that we talked about here today, right? Like really looking at lifestyle, really looking at supplementation, really thinking about how you can optimize these core pathways that can really keep you alive for these breakthrough discoveries that are going to be happening in 5, 10, 15 years time.
Yeah. And the new AI that's emerging, that's combining your biomarker, taking all the data and seeing how you can optimize your biomarkers through AI. Very interesting. How does skincare factor into longevity?
Oh, I love this question. So in the longevity space, in the biohacking space, in the health space, we don't always want to talk about looking pretty or looking good, because it feels superficial, right? So the truth is a lot of the time you want longevity, or you want access to longevity because you want to look good. But it's this weird, I would say, sense of, longevity is about health, and we shouldn't care about skincare because that's just a superficial. That is absolutely wrong. Skincare is essential to longevity. Why is that? Because your skin is literally the foundation of your immune system. Skin is this amazing organ. It doesn't just, make you look young or old. It is the barrier organ of your body, and it is the very thing that's protecting your body from the billions and trillions of pathogens and toxins and and microorganisms in the outside world. And our body, every inch of our body is being barraged by billions and billions of these things every second, and our skin is protecting us from that. And that is amazing. Why is that important? Because if we're talking about deterioration, if we're talking about aging, we're talking about your body trying to deal with these stressors constantly. And when you have these stressors constantly, your body is always trying to catch up to deal with them. That's why we have chronic inflammation. That's why we have oxidative stress. There's all of these things that cause our body to deteriorate. And they're because there are these things from the outside world that are constantly barraging us. So skin, it's a literal health concern. If your skin is not healthy, if your skin is biologically old, it's doing a worse job from doing what it's supposed to do, which is to protect your other organs from the stresses of the outside world. It becomes more permeable, and your aging actually accelerates because your skin health isn't optimal. And skin health isn't just how it looks. Like it's an organ. It actually has health.
By the way, your skin looks amazing.
Oh, thank you.
No, it does.
Thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you.
Spotless.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, I take care of my skin, but I don't use that many skincare products. Really, I just use a little moisturizer after I shower. That's it. I don't really take any serums. I don't even do retinol yet, even though retinol is a great compound. Skin is an inside-out affair, which is to say, like we were talking about before, where skin evolved as a barrier organ, things don't penetrate for a reason. When you put products topically on your skin, for the most part, they don't get absorbed, which is shocking for a lot of people to hear. But basically, there's this thing called the 500 Dalton rule. And the 500 Dalton rule is that a compound needs to be less than 500 Daltons in width for it to pass through the skin barrier. Why is that an issue? Well, because things like hyaluronic acid, for example, that people, it's a serum people put on their skin. It's huge. It's like 100,000 Daltons. There's no way that's passing through the skin. Collagen, if you've ever heard of people putting collagen in topical products, it's no way it's going to pass through. So, I think the best method, I'm sorry. I know.
No.
Well, look, the skincare industry emerged.
I put so much on my face.
No. I mean, okay, so retinol is great.
It's the 500 Dalton?
500 Dalton rule.
Okay.
And you could Google this, okay. Do your own homework and see peptides.
What about combining niacin with these products as a base?
So
post the toner.
So niacinamide, which is a form of
niacinamide,
B3, is fantastic, and that is small enough to pass through.
Does that help increase the bioavailability of these other products?
I don't know if it increases the bioavailability, but if something's too big to pass through, it's just not going to pass through.
Very interesting.
And I think that's the argument that's been used for hyaluronic acid, because they call it a carrier or something. But like hyaluronic acid is actually a very important compound in the matrix of the skin. Hyaluronic acid and collagen and elastin are the things that fill out the skin and basically make your skin look young, or one of the things that make your skin look young. What is hyaluronic acid's primary role? There's many, but its primary role is hydration. It is nature's hydration miracle. It helps you hold on to water so that you can actually feel hydrated. So, you can put a moisturizer on, and essentially what that moisturizer doing is it's just blocking your pores so that moisture can't leave. But I would much rather you take hyaluronic acid orally or N-acetylglucosamine, which is a precursor of hyaluronic acid, to increase the hyaluronic acid levels in your body from the inside out. There's also probably arguments against moisturizers or against too much topical skincare, because there's this whole conversation around skin microbiome. We all know about the microbiome in our gut and how important that is to getting in the right nutrients, making sure that our body's optimized correctly, making the right enzymes, the right hormones. Like, we have something similar going on with our skin, where we have the skin microbiome, and that's working with our own skin to kill off bad actors or bad viruses or bacteria. And when you're putting all of this stuff on your face or your skin, you're stripping away the natural microbiome, and we're only just beginning to understand what we're doing there. So I'm a big fan of the inside out approach. Finally, one last thing, because I can talk to you about hours about skin. It's so fascinating. So we talked about senescent cells, right? And so senescent cells, they are this thing in your body, these cells that refuse to die. They go zombie-like and they accumulate. They're one of the hallmarks of aging. Now, one of the biggest sites of senescent cell production is your skin. So your skin is one of the biggest drivers of your body to make senescent cells. Why is that? Well, because your skin is your largest organ, A, and B, it's also the organ that's experiencing the most stress. It's the one that's receiving sun damage, extrinsic, intrinsic, drivers of aging. It's all hitting your skin at all times, and therefore it's dealing with a lot. It's got a lot of trauma, right? And when it has the trauma, it creates all these senescent cells. Why is that a problem? It's a problem because senescent cells don't just stay static. They don't just hang out where they're made. Senescent cells will leave your skin, they'll enter your bloodstream, and they'll end up in the other organs in your body. They'll end up in your lungs, they'll end up in your heart, they'll end up in your brain. And the problem with that is that senescent cells excrete all of these compounds, these inflammatory compounds, these toxic compounds that are bad for your body and accelerate the production of senescent cells elsewhere. So unhealthy skin, biologically unhealthy skin that is producing too many senescent cells that you're not being taken care of, it's not just about looking good. It's about heart health. It's about brain health, because it can be a driver for systemic aging through the accumulation of senescent cells and lots of other things. So yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Very interesting. I just purchased a rapamycin topical cream, actually, which we're not going to talk about. But
we could go look at your medicine cabinet after this.
Hyaluronic acid, I ingest 1,000 milligrams a night. Is that too much?
I think so. I mean, look, I'd have to review. I would say the therapeutic dose is probably something around 100, 150 milligrams. I've seen things as low as 50 milligrams. 1,000 feels a bit high, but then again, I'd have to look at the literature. But it's good that you're ingesting it. It's great. It's not just great for skin. It's great for joints. Lots of benefits with hyaluronic acid production. However, not all hyaluronic acid is going to be fully metabolized by your body, and this is an issue. It's like this idea of like, oh, if I eat an eyeball, am I going to have better vision? Well, no, that's not how things work. That's why we use precursors. So that's why I'm a big fan of hyaluronic acid precursors, because there's a whole upstream process to the production of hyaluronic acid that involve various mechanisms. So, to increase hyaluronic acids, you want a precursor like an N-acetylglucosamine. But what you also want to do is you want to focus on the health of the fibroblasts in your skin. So you probably haven't heard of fibroblasts, but they are the superstar of your skin. Everything cool and fun and exciting when it comes to skin aging and skin rejuvenation happens in the fibroblasts. The fibroblasts in your skin are these cells that create hyaluronic acid. They create collagen, they create elastin, all of those things that make your skin supple, young, wrinkle-free. That's being produced by fibroblasts. So you also need to think about the health of your fibroblasts, and you need to introduce compounds that support the functioning of those fibroblasts, because those are ultimately going to be the things that allow your body to create the collagen that you so badly want, the elastin that makes your skin feel elastic, et cetera, et cetera.
And which compounds are those?
So really simple ones, vitamin C and vitamin E together synergistically have really, really been shown as one of the most well-studied to support fibroblast health for your skin.
Astaxanthin?
Astaxanthin is a fantastic one. Astaxanthin is one of my favorite supplements overall. Astaxanthin is fantastic for skin. It supports the health of your fibroblasts, but it also does a lot of really cool things. One, it's one of the most powerful antioxidants. I think it's like 6,000 times more powerful than vitamin C as an antioxidant. It also does this really cool thing where it actually protects your body from sun damage. So it's like, sometimes it's described as sunblock in a supplement, where, I don't wear sunscreen every day. I probably should, but I take supplements every day, and I make sure to have astaxanthin in my stack because I know it's protecting my skin somewhat from the damage of the UV. Huge fan of it. One thing I'd say when you're taking astaxanthin, it's one of those compounds where the concentration of active astaxanthin is usually very, very low. So astaxanthin is this carotenoid that's found first in marine algae, and then the algae is eaten by shrimp or krill, and then the krill are eaten by other things. And that's why salmon turn pink. That's why turn orange. That's why flamingos turn pink, because they're all eating things that eat the algae. Anyways, so you get it from different sources, but most of them have very low concentrations. A lot of supplements out there, a lot of supplement companies, they will sell supplements that are like 1 or 3 milligrams astaxanthin. But what they're not telling you is that that's only at a 1% concentration. So then it becomes 1% of 1 milligram or 1% of 3 milligrams or 1% of 12 milligrams. I see this all the time and it really just drives me wild. So you have to make sure that when you're getting an astaxanthin supplement, you are looking at the dose and you're making sure that that percentage is equal to the therapeutic dose, which could be anywhere from like 3 to 12 milligrams.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's one of the, actually, we've only, so across our formulations, we've only repeated 2 compounds. Everything else is only in one product. And that's astaxanthin and spermidine, because we love them so much.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. So I didn't only bring you on because you're an expert in longevity, but you're an expert in longevity compounds, and you just launched an amazing product who I've been following along for a long time. Can you explain to us the name Forever Young and how you came up with it and what inspired you? What was your intent behind creating this company?
Well, so the initial inspiration for the name is Carl Jung, and of the many brilliant things Carl Jung did or said, he said, life begins at 40. Up until then, you're just doing research. And as someone in my 30s, I love this idea of looking forward with excitement and optimism rather than looking forward with a fear of decline. And I think this framework of thinking is so powerful because we don't realize that there's so much about life that is time sensitive. When we're young, we don't realize it. And of course, when we're older, we realize it. And I felt like, yes, longevity science on a scientific level is amazing, but on a psychosocial level where where you can imagine a world where you can have agency over the aging process and you can look to the future not as, oh God, I'm going to, be less able, I'm going to not have, the ability to exercise or travel or whatever, but look forward and be like, wow, my life is just beginning. I want that. I wanted to bottle that up. But the other reason I really loved Carl Jung, one of the fathers of psychoanalysis, really was behind this idea of self-awareness. And the need to become self-aware. And he said that the journey of life or the purpose of life is one of self-discovery, is to really discover oneself. And through the process of psychoanalysis, you spend time kind of peeling back all the layers that have been applied to you to understand who you really are. I think when you think about psychoanalysis in, let's say, a 1.0 world, you think about it in terms of, oh, let's find the real you, as if there's one you, right? And I think that because of death, because of the idea of death, and because of aging, there's so much in our lives that gets shortcut or accelerated, or, we get pressure put on our lives because we don't have enough time. And so we're in a race to make money. We're in a race to figure things out. And that actually makes it more difficult for us to really discover ourselves because there's all of these resource constraints, whatever they are for you. What I love about this idea of longevity, if we were to solve aging, that would mean that you can discover yourself, but then discover a new self and discover a new self and discover a new self. This idea that you can have multiple selves. And of course, we're already seeing that, right? Like it used to be, people lived until 30 and 35 and then just died of an infection or a broken limb or something like that. And so, it made sense to have one career and it made sense to have one partner, right? Because like saying till death do you part, well, you really only had to stand the person for 10 years before you died. So it'd be easy to spend the rest of your life with that person because your life was short. Now we're living super long lives, right? And we're about to live much longer lives. So the divorce rate skyrockets. People say, oh, that's terrible. The divorce rates skyrocket. I'm like, is it? Is that a bad thing? Or is that just is that this understanding where people change over many, many decades? And we now have to shift. I mean, I think we should take away the word divorce because it's not like a failure. It's a switch. It's a new stage. It's a new chapter. And as we live longer and longer lives, I see no reason why we shouldn't, have new partners or, have new passions, have new of thing. So long story short, in naming Jung after Carl Jung, I didn't want it to be just about your health. Because maybe you wake up in the mornings worried about your telomeres and your senescent cells, but the average person doesn't. You know, the average person is worried about their loved ones. They're worried about, asking a girl out and wondering if she's going to say yes, or, if you're going to get that promotion. And of course, all those things are tied to your health. But I really wanted to make it about that story because that's where the magic happens. And that's where longevity science is really going to change humanity, like as a whole.
Discovering your shadow self as you age as well.
Yeah.
How did you choose, within all the research, how did you come to these supplements that you chose? The core supplements and the compounds within them?
Great question. So, we took a very contrarian approach to thinking about formulation with this idea that aging is a patchwork of deterioration, and there are many different ways that you can target aging, both from a supplement level and a lifestyle level. And understanding that there was this duality to targeting aging. There's the complexity of aging itself, and then there's all of these molecules, and then all of these lifestyle factors. We wanted to bring them all together. So the way our product ecosystem works is we have a master formula, and then we have booster formulas. The master formula is really the core set of compounds that seem to target the very drivers of aging on the most subcellular level. And then the booster formulas are all designed around very specific longevity goals that are important for your longevity, for those people that want to take things to the next level. So the 4 boosters we've launched with, we have a fasting tonic to support people with intermittent fasting. We have a glucose blocker. This is to help people that are doing glucose restriction diets or trying to cut carbs. We have an advanced sleep repair, which is focused on increasing longevity mechanisms while you sleep. And then we have the cellular skin renewal, which is the only supplement that has targeted all of the hallmarks of aging as it happens in skin as an organ. So it's a very interesting longevity meets skincare product. And we basically said, right, how can we formulate all of these in a way where we target longevity, and how can we help people build a total longevity lifestyle? So when you're going on our website or when you're checking out our products, you start with the master formula. Mm-hmm. It's a fantastic formula. It's best in class. There's nothing else like it. It comes in an AM and a PM dose. We've chrono-timed it so that it links with your body's internal mechanisms. In the day, it gives you energy. In the night, it helps you go to sleep. And we've also made sure that everything has a therapeutic dose. Everything's the best quality. It's really, in my opinion, the best all-in-one longevity supplement on the market. There's 12 different ingredients in there, all of the heavy hitters that you've heard of, quercetin, fisetin, apigenin, spermidine, astaxanthin, calcium alpha-ketoglutarate. You're going to find it in this stack. Then with the other ingredients, with the other formulas, what we tried to do is we said, right, we know the lifestyle endpoints that we want to target. So like skin, glucose, fasting, sleep. But what other longevity compounds are out there? What else are we seeing in the literature? What else are we seeing in the animal models that are actually extending lifespan? And how can we incorporate those in a way that give people dual effects? Mm-hmm. So we did this as much as we could. So for example, glycine, it's a fantastic compound for longevity. It increases lifespan in many animal models, but it's also fantastic for sleep. So we put that in our sleep formula. Berberine, which we talked about. Berberine seems to modulate very similar longevity mechanisms that metformin does. And it's a fantastic compound, but it also helps balance and stabilize blood sugar levels. So we put that in our glucose blocker formula. So we did it in a way where we wanted people to get the most out of their efforts. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to amplify those efforts through the use of supplements. So combining supplements with lifestyle, I think, is the most powerful way you're going to get your bang for your buck in longevity. And that's how we kind of thought about creating our product ecosystem.
And what future products will we see from Jung?
I can't say. I'd love to say, but I know that sounds really cheesy, but there's a few longevity goals. Well, look, what I can say is there's something around exercise that we're developing. And, we all know that
A lactate meter, a continuous lactate meter.
Perhaps. I can't give away any secrets, but exercise is a really interesting one because we don't see bodybuilders living to 200 years old. While exercise is really great for you, there's also certain drawbacks on letting your cells grow and your muscles grow too much. That's actually not great for longevity. So we're in the process of thinking about how to support people who want to exercise, but are also thinking about their longevity. We've got a few other ideas on the pipeline that relate to longevity, but for now we have the 4 boosters, and we're going to stick with that. Next year, we're going to be launching a biomarker testing, which we're very excited about. We're doing biomarking testing a bit differently in the sense that what you have now is a lot of companies where you send in a blood sample and they send you like 1 million different biomarkers. And it's really hard to draw any real conclusions based on that because of the systemic nature of the way biology works. So you'll get a blood panel and you'll see all of these different things, but because all of the mechanisms in your body are all connected to each other, sometimes it could be very difficult to tell what's happening and send you on a wild goose hunt. So we're being very strict with the way that we're creating our biomarker testing, and we're actually creating different suites that target different lifestyle endpoints. And so we're going to have a biomarker testing suite just for skin. We're going to have one just for sleep. We're going to have one just for fasting. We're going to have one just for glucose. And then the plan is to launch a biomarker testing suite specific to each booster that we launch. The reason being is that you should really be testing the things that you're targeting. And you should be thinking of, rather than having some wild goose chase and trying to improve everything in your life, which is impossible. Because if we could improve everything, it would just be the end of medicine. Like, we're not there yet. There's no one algorithm that suddenly has solved your biology. If we had that, we would just be healed. You need to think of it in terms of categories. So you need to say, what do I want to improve? What do I want to focus on? And how do I measure that? And that's kind of how we're designing the experience.
Yeah, I love that. Wow. It's very interesting. It's easier for the consumer to understand what they're getting, right, from their biomarker testing, because I get a comprehensive blood panel quarterly, and now I have to import it into ChatGPT to give me it in layman's terms, because I get 30 minutes, 1 hour with my functional medicine practitioner on a Skype, and I have to record it and I have to re-listen to what he says, and depending on which doctor you have, depends on what they're going to tell you. So I wish it was more easily digestible for the consumer. So I think what you're doing is very interesting.
That is so important.
Like, I'm getting a high cholesterol here, but one doctor says that's bad. Another doctor says, well, actually it's not. It won't correlate. And then it's like, I have an ApoB high. And then one says you should get a clearly scan. One says, well, you exercise and you're 31 years old, so you don't need a clearly scan. So.
And that's really a testament to we're still learning so much about our bodies. And so while we are now starting to measure, and we're able to measure so much about our bodies in a way that we never used to, one of the things that we have to caution, and one of the things I tell everyone, is there's so much that we don't know. So for example, with the microbiome, it's a great example. I mean, we literally know more about the surface of the moon than we know about our own microbiome. And I think that we need to be really careful when we're, blasting our microbiomes with lots of different strains, or picking specific strains, or, biohacking our microbiome. I think it's worth being very cautious, because there's a lot that we don't know about. And it's the same with many of these other biomarkers. And you have a lot of people that, again, will use data They'll say, I've measured this, so therefore there's this number, therefore this is a fact. But there's an incredible complexity in your biology, and there's a systemic nature that means that everything is interconnected, and we're still picking up the pieces of how everything is connected, where as we enter a era, really, where data and health data is going to become more available, I think we're also going to be entering an era where a lot of mistakes happen and we go on a lot of wild goose hunts because we're simply using that data as a stand-in for, I don't know, something we don't know. So yeah, definitely be careful with that. You also mentioned something that like I'm hugely passionate about, and it's the idea of like being able to digest and understand something. And like, Ben, you're an expert. I'm an expert. Probably a lot of the people listening to this podcast are experts as well, right? More than the average person. And why that worries me is that we're having these conversations, and we're having conversations of big words like autophagy and senescence and oxidative stress and all of that. And to the average person, that means nothing. And I think ultimately we need to think about how can we express these ideas or share these ideas, or how can we make products, or how can we make experiences for healthcare that don't require a PhD to understand? Because ultimately, if people don't understand them, they're not going to act on them. They're not going to do them. And the example I love to give on this, because here in the longevity or biohacking world, we're like, what's the data? Is this true? Is that study true? What did that study say? Is that real? Like, there's so much debate, as if we found the truth, it would finally solve our problems. Well, let me put it to you this way. There is no question about what you need to do to get a six-pack of abs. No question. It's not a mystery. It's, we don't have to debate studies. We don't have to talk about should you do this? It's like, no, it's exercise and it's diet. There's a reason that most people don't have a six-pack of abs. And because there's a barrier. In this case, it's an effort barrier. It's a resource barrier. It's a time barrier. But barriers matter in healthcare. And if you're a doctor and you're a scientist and you're sitting there thinking, I think a six-pack would be really great for people to have, you also have to understand that if you expect people to want to get that six-pack, there's going to be a huge barrier. And no matter how much you believe in that science, if you ignore that barrier, those people are never going to benefit from actually having that six-pack, whatever those benefits of having a six-pack are, right? So in the case of longevity science and everything that we're talking about today, I look at my colleagues and, I have lots of brilliant colleagues that are doing exceptional work in labs, but unless we can translate them into products or ideas that the average person can easily integrate in their lives and they'll actually want to integrate in their lives, it doesn't matter. It's just not going to matter because it's only going to be you and me taking it, and we'll look great and we'll feel great. Mm-hmm. But that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to change society. So yeah.
Beautiful. Well, where can the audience find you?
Right. You can check us out on Instagram at Young Longevity. So that's JUNG Longevity. But you can also go online, foreveryoung.co. So that's foreverjung.co. So yeah, okay. Check us out.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to ordering your supplements and trying them
My
myself.
Pleasure.